Right now, imagine this. You're deep in a forest, and you've just broken your leg. There's no hospital nearby, no painkillers, no antibiotics, not even a phone to call for help. How long do you think you'd survive? For our ancient ancestors, this wasn't some hypothetical nightmare, it was Tuesday. Every single day, humans faced injuries, infections, and diseases with absolutely nothing we'd recognize as modern medicine. And yet, somehow, our species survived long enough for you to be here today. So how did they do it? The answers are stranger, smarter, and honestly more terrifying than you'd expect. Today, if you cut your finger, you slap on a bandage and forget about it in an hour. If you get a fever, you take a pill and you're back to normal by tomorrow. We've gotten so used to modern medicine that we barely think about it. But rewind 50,000 years, and the picture looks completely different. A tiny cut could turn deadly within days, and a simple fever could wipe out an entire family. There was no germ theory, no antibiotics, no surgery rooms, just humans, nature, and raw trial and error. Long before pharmacies existed, nature was the only pharmacy anyone had. Ancient humans became the very first pharmacists on Earth, except their research method was terrifyingly simple: eat it, and see what happens. Some plants healed, some plants poisoned, and through thousands of years of trial, error, and probably a lot of accidental deaths, they built a mental library of what worked. They learned that willow bark could ease pain and reduce fever, the same plant that would eventually lead to modern aspirin thousands of years later. They discovered that certain mosses and mushrooms could be packed into wounds to stop bleeding and prevent infection. Garlic, believe it or not, was one of the earliest known natural antibiotics, used across dozens of ancient cultures to fight infection. And then there's honey, one of nature's most powerful accidental discoveries, with natural antibacterial properties that made it perfect for dressing wounds. In fact, honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient tombs that are still perfectly edible thousands of years later. When bleeding wouldn't stop through plants alone, ancient healers discovered something both brilliant and brutal: using fire to seal a wound shut. This process, called cauterization, was excruciatingly painful, but it worked, sealing blood vessels shut almost instantly. It's a technique so effective that, in extreme emergency situations, modern doctors still occasionally use a version of it today. Broken bones were another everyday disaster. Without x-rays or surgery, ancient humans had to rely on nothing but instinct and careful observation. When someone broke a limb, others in the tribe would carefully straighten the bone, then splint it using straight branches, bark, and vines to hold everything in place. It sounds primitive, and it was, but here's the incredible part. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons where badly broken bones had healed back into proper alignment. That means this crude, homemade method actually worked well enough for people to fully recover and walk again. Some ancient societies even developed early forms of traction and stabilization techniques that wouldn't look completely out of place in a basic first aid course today. Not bad for a species that hadn't invented the wheel yet in some parts of the world. Now here's something you probably never thought about. What did ancient humans do about toothaches? Without dentists, a bad tooth wasn't just painful, it could become a life-threatening infection. Using nothing but sharpened flint tools, ancient humans were essentially performing primitive dental drilling long before modern dentistry existed. Incredibly, archaeologists have found ancient teeth with tiny drilled holes, evidence of dental procedures dating back over 9,000 years. Some skeletons even show hand-carved fillings made from beeswax, used to fill cavities and stop the pain. Imagine sitting down, and instead of a dentist's chair, it's a rock, and instead of anesthesia, it's just courage. But nothing compares to what might be the most shocking medical practice in ancient history: trepanation, the act of drilling or scraping a hole directly into a living human skull. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of ancient skulls with these deliberate holes, some dating back over 7,000 years. And this wasn't some rare ritual performed once or twice, it's been found on almost every continent, suggesting different cultures independently arrived at the same extreme idea. Picture the scene: no anesthesia, no sterile tools, just a sharpened stone blade, and someone holding perfectly still while another carefully scraped away layers of bone. It's the kind of procedure that sounds like it should have a 100% death rate. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. Many of these skulls show clear signs of bone regrowth around the hole, proof that patients didn't just survive, they lived for years afterward. Some skulls even show evidence of multiple trepanation procedures performed on the same person over their lifetime. Whatever they were doing, it was working often enough that people kept coming back for more. Today, doctors still sometimes remove a small section of skull to relieve pressure on the brain. Trepanation's strange, distant echo in modern neurosurgery. Now you might be wondering, how did anyone survive procedures like that without screaming the whole forest awake? Ancient humans discovered that certain plants, like the opium poppy, could dull pain and induce a calm, trance-like state. Others chewed on coca leaves, or used alcohol from fermented fruit to numb both body and mind before and during painful procedures. It wasn't perfect pain relief by modern standards, but it was enough to make the impossible slightly more survivable, the very first steps toward what would become modern anesthesia. So with all this ingenuity, were ancient humans actually as healthy as modern medicine makes us today? Not even close. The average life expectancy for most of human history hovered around just 30 years old, compared to over 70 years old today. But that number is a little misleading. It wasn't that people simply couldn't live past 30. Childhood was brutally dangerous, and childbirth was one of the deadliest events a person could go through. Historians estimate that in many ancient societies, roughly 1 in every 3 to 5 women died from complications during childbirth. Infant mortality was staggeringly high too. In some ancient populations, nearly half of all children didn't survive past the age of 5. Compare that to today, where a routine trip to a modern hospital can catch complications before they ever become fatal, where vaccines prevent diseases that used to wipe out entire villages, and a complex surgery is now, well, routine. But here's the twist you might not expect. Modern medicine owes an enormous debt to these ancient discoveries. That willow bark remedy, it's the direct ancestor of aspirin. The antibacterial honey treatment. Researchers today study honey-based dressings for antibiotic-resistant infections. Even trepanation has echoes in modern neurosurgery, where doctors still sometimes relieve pressure on the brain by removing a small section of skull. So the next time you're annoyed about waiting 20 minutes in a doctor's office, or complaining about a headache you can fix with a single pill. Remember this. Our ancestors were drilling holes into skulls with sharpened rocks, setting broken bones with tree branches, and treating infections with honey. And somehow, enough of them survived for humanity to make it all the way to here. Would you have had the courage to survive in a world like that? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this as wild as I did, hit subscribe for more stories about how ancient humans figured out life long before we had any of the answers.